What was the final straw that got a teacher fired at your school? We thought there was a bomb on campus. Instead, police walked our most beloved teacher out in handcuffs for stealing tens of thousands of dollars from a charity fundraiser meant to save his own son. It was Mr. Halpern, the AP environmental science teacher, the one who always wore hiking boots and talked about ethical responsibility, the guy who helped run the school's big annual charity marathon. Here's what made it worse. That marathon was for his own son. His kid had a rare kidney disorder, and the entire town had rallied behind them for months. Bake sales, car washes, sponsored runs. Our gym was covered in green ribbons with his son's name printed on them. Students were donating birthday money. Parents were writing five-figure checks. We were 3 days away from the event when the police showed up. Turns out Mr. Halpern had been siphoning money from the fundraiser account. Not a little bit either. Tens of thousands. He'd opened a separate private account under a variation of the charity name and redirected online donations there. The school only found out because a parent who worked in finance noticed irregularities on the tax documentation. And that wasn't even the part that got him arrested. When investigators dug into his finances, they discovered he'd been using school-issued devices to run a side business selling environmental consulting packages that didn't exist. Fake invoices, fake clients. Parents from our own district were getting billed for services that were never provided. The local news vans lined the street for days. His son stopped coming to school immediately. I remember seeing the green ribbons get torn down off lockers like they were evidence in a crime scene. Some kids were angry. Some were embarrassed. Most of us just felt sick. The marathon still happened, but the energy was completely different. No music, no balloons, just quiet laps around the track. Mr. Halpern was escorted out in handcuffs during third period the day after the lockdown. My chemistry teacher cried while explaining what fraud meant. Last I heard, he took a plea deal. Story 2. For years, rumors swirled about Coach Drennan. Bonfires with students, detentions disappearing, field trips that didn't make sense. None of that got him fired. Coach Drennan was basically untouchable for years. He taught US history, ran the wrestling team, and had this reputation for being old school. Translation: he yelled a lot and nobody questioned him. People whispered about things constantly. There were stories about him letting certain seniors skip detentions if they helped out after practice. There were photos floating around of him at bonfires with students, red cup in hand, grinning like he was one of them. One time he allegedly crashed a student's graduation party and stayed until 2 in the morning. Parents complained. Nothing happened. He even got pulled over once during a field trip because he was driving the school van 25 miles over the limit. Administration called it a misunderstanding. Every year, same pattern. Noise. Rumors. Sure, the actual reason he lost his job was so mundane it almost felt fake. Our district switched to a digital grading system my senior year. Every assignment, every test score, every attendance mark had to be logged online in real time. No more paper gradebooks. Within a month, parents started noticing something strange. Their kids' online portals showed perfect attendance, even on days they were absent. Assignments appeared graded seconds after being submitted, all with identical feedback. Good effort. Even essays that were uploaded as blank documents received B's. The vice principal ran an audit. Turns out Coach Drennan hadn't been teaching the curriculum at all. He'd reused the same slideshow from 2009 for years, regardless of syllabus changes. Entire units required by the state were never covered. Instead, he'd spend class periods showing sports documentaries or telling stories about how things used to be. The digital system exposed everything, because timestamps don't lie. It showed that he entered months' worth of grades in a single 47-minute window one Friday afternoon. Hundreds of entries, all rounded to nice, even numbers. 80, 85, 90. No written feedback. No rubric attachments. Nothing. When administrators cross-checked physical assignments, they discovered something worse. Many didn't exist. Students had been marked as completing projects that were never assigned. Some midterms listed in the system had never actually been given. The district panicked because transcripts had already been sent to colleges. An emergency review board had to reevaluate 2 graduating classes. He wasn't escorted out dramatically. No police. No handcuffs. He just didn't show up the following Monday. A substitute came in and quietly told us to open our textbooks to chapter 12, a chapter we were apparently supposed to have covered 2 months earlier. By the end of the semester, the wrestling banners were taken down. His name disappeared from the staff directory. The school never made a big announcement. They just called it contract non-renewal. Years of sketchy behavior? Ignored. Fabricated grades in a database? That's what finally ended it. Story 3. Dr. Vale taught second-year architecture. He was one of those professors who dressed in all black, spoke in slow, dramatic pauses, and called buildings emotional organisms. People either adored him or avoided eye contact at all costs. Mid-semester, he announced he'd be hosting an exclusive weekend design workshop at his off-campus studio. Said it would separate the serious from the mediocre. Attendance wasn't mandatory, but he heavily implied it would influence final evaluations. About 15 students signed up. Saturday came. The address he gave turned out to be a rented art loft downtown. Industrial lighting, drafting tables, music playing softly. Except when students arrived, no one was there. No professor, no workshop. Just one confused classmate who'd also shown up and assumed she was early. They waited, texted him, no response. By Monday, rumors were flying. He strolled into lecture like nothing had happened. When someone asked about the workshop, he smiled and said, "Creative independence sometimes requires solitude." Weird, but not fireable. The actual issue surfaced 2 weeks later. One of the students who had signed up for the workshop filed a complaint with the department. Not about anything physical, not about a relationship, about authorship. She'd submitted a concept model earlier in the term, a distinctive bridge design using asymmetrical tension arcs. Dr. Vale had praised it in front of everyone. Then a faculty exhibition opened in the university gallery. Front and center was a nearly identical structure credited solely to Dr. Vale. Same curves, same load distribution concept, same distinctive flaw in one of the joints that she'd actually been criticized for during critique. When confronted, he claimed that student work naturally mirrors mentorship. He said innovation is collaborative energy, but then more students started looking closely at past exhibitions. Turns out several of his published conceptual pieces closely resembled previous top projects from his classes over the years. Minor adjustments, different materials, but structurally the same. The administration launched a formal review. It got worse. Email records showed he'd requested high-resolution files of certain student drafts under the guise of portfolio guidance. Those files later appeared in submissions under his name for external design competitions, some with prize money attached. The cancelled workshop? According to security logs, he'd been out of state that weekend presenting one of those student-derived concepts at a private industry event. The gallery closed within days. His faculty page vanished shortly after. No dramatic announcement, just a vague statement about ethical violations related to intellectual property. Last I heard, he pivoted careers entirely and started consulting overseas, though I have no idea in what capacity. Dr. Vale, pretentious black-clad buildings are emotional organisms, vampire, who ghosts students at a fake workshop so he can jet off and pimp their bridge designs as his own paid gigs. Steals high-res files, tweaks the material, keeps the same dumb joint flaw they got roasted for, then hits them with innovation is collaborative energy like a LinkedIn guru on bath salts. Verdict. NTA, students who reported him are heroes. This dude's not a mentor. He's a concept parasite with a gallery show and prize checks built on undergrad free labor. Fire his ass yesterday. Before we move on to the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know your favorite part in the comments and share your own story too. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Quick pause before this gets worse. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Trust me, it only escalates from here. Story 4. Everyone loves a little teacher rumor until it turns into forged documents, missing school funds, and a viral live stream that exposes everything in real time. They were for Mr. Kessler and Ms. Rowan. They taught across the hall from each other, English, Lit, and Government. Both mid-40s, both married, both the kind of teachers students described as cool but intense. They had that banter that made classrooms feel like sitcom sets. She'd interrupt his lectures through the shared wall as a joke. He'd dramatically accuse her of constitutional violations. Kids loved it. There were rumors, obviously. There are always rumors when two adults laugh too easily at each other's jokes. But it never felt serious. Just hallway gossip recycled every semester. Then one Thursday night, something exploded on local social media. Not an accident. Not an injury. A live stream. A senior at our school had been at a downtown restaurant celebrating a birthday. Someone recognized the two teachers seated in a back booth together. Not unusual on its own. But what caught attention was was the way they were acting. Hands intertwined, heads leaned together, no attempt at distance. The students started recording as a joke. What none of us knew was that both teachers had told their spouses they were chaperoning an overnight academic competition out of town. The live stream gained traction fast because people started tagging family members. Within an hour, comments turned from LOL caught to something darker. One of the spouses showed up at the restaurant. There was shouting. Someone knocked over a chair. The stream cut out. By morning, the clip had thousands of views in our small city. School started like normal, except both of their classroom doors were locked. Substitute teachers stood awkwardly at the front of each room reading from emergency lesson plans. By second period, the principal called an unscheduled staff meeting. We could see administrators pacing through the hallways, phones glued to their ears. It wasn't just about the affair. The deeper issues surfaced later that week. The academic competition they'd claimed to be supervising, it turned out they'd filed official district paperwork listing 10 students as attendees for that trip. Transportation forms, liability waivers, meal stipends, hotel reservations charged to the school's extracurricular budget. None of the students had gone anywhere. The paperwork was fabricated. Funds had been approved based on false documentation. Essentially, they'd created a fake school event to justify being out of town together. Once the district realized money had been allocated under false pretenses, it shifted from personal scandal to financial misconduct. That's when lawyers got involved. Both teachers were placed on administrative leave by Monday. Story 5. She taught us how to dissect failed spacecraft missions and question missing data. Then the district handed her a script for what she was allowed to say in her own classroom. She refused to sign it. Dr. Mira Sen taught advanced physics at my high school. Small woman, silver streak in her hair, spoke softly enough that you had to actually pay attention. She'd worked in aerospace engineering before switching to teaching. There was a framed photo in her classroom of her standing in front of a launch pad, hard hat under her arm. She didn't just teach formulas. She'd dim the lights and project schematics of failed spacecraft missions. Not to laugh at them, to dissect them. Failure is archived data, she'd say. Only institutions pretend otherwise. Her classroom was different. Instead of neat rows, we sat at lab tables covered in butcher paper where we'd scribble diagrams during debates. She encouraged us to challenge the textbook. If a derivation skipped steps, she made us find them. If a historical scientific claim was later disproven, she'd ask why it took so long. She also had a habit that administrators didn't love. Every Friday, she ran something she called open inquiry. Students could bring any question, scientific, ethical, societal, and we'd examine it using evidence and logic. Not political rants, not indoctrination, just structured analysis. One week someone asked about climate modeling and government data transparency. Another week it was about military funding and research grants. She never told us what to believe. She'd just say, what's the source? Who benefits? What's missing? Apparently, that was the problem. A parent complained after their son mentioned at dinner that they'd discussed whether corporations should influence scientific publications. The parent interpreted it as anti-business rhetoric. A few more complaints surfaced. Words like agenda and bias started circulating at school board meetings. Then came the audit. The district claimed her curriculum deviated from approved pacing guides. They said she spent excessive instructional time on supplemental material not listed in the official syllabus. Never mind that her students consistently had the highest AP pass rates in the county. One afternoon, midway through a lab on orbital mechanics, an assistant principal stepped into the room and asked her to come to the office. She didn't return. For a week, rumors filled the vacuum. Finally, an email went out stating she had resigned effective immediately. No explanation. But here's what most people didn't know until later. She'd refused to sign a compliance statement, agreeing to limit classroom discussions strictly to standardized test content. They'd presented her with a written directive outlining approved topics and phrasing guidelines. She declined. A friend of mine who worked in the front office said the word insubordination was used. Story 6. He didn't break a single rule on paper. He didn't yell, miss deadlines, or fail evaluations. He just refused to teach from a script, and that was enough to end his career. He taught world history, but if you expected timelines and memorized dates, you were in the wrong room. He brought in photocopies of letters, diary entries, shipping manifests, old court transcripts. He made us read conflicting accounts of the same event and ask, which one sounds rehearsed? He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to be cool. He just refused to simplify anything. Instead of chapter tests, he gave us reconstruction challenges. He'd hand out fragmented documents and tell us to piece together what probably happened, then defend our conclusion. The weird part? He never used the district-issued slide decks. Ever. Our school had recently invested in a uniform digital curriculum. Every teacher was supposed to project identical lessons, same bullet points, same pacing. It kept everything aligned. Mr. Caldwell called it pre-packaged memory. He still covered the required material. We learned every war, every treaty, every major movement, but he layered it differently. He'd show us the official narrative first, then the primary sources that complicated it. Students loved it. His class filled up fast every year. The trouble started during an observation. An assistant superintendent came in unannounced and sat in the back while we were dissecting propaganda posters from different eras. Caldwell had asked us to analyze visual manipulation techniques. Nothing radical, just critical reading of imagery. After class, word spread that the observer wasn't pleased. A week later, Caldwell was called into a curriculum fidelity meeting. The phrase alone sounded ominous. Apparently, he had deviated from the district's approved sequence by 2 days. 2 days. He'd also assigned supplemental documents that weren't on the pre-approved resource list, even though they were from reputable archives. They handed him a corrective action plan. It required him to submit weekly lesson scripts in advance and stick to provided slides verbatim. He lasted about a month under that. Then came the incident that sealed it. During a unit review, a student asked why a particular historical figure's controversial policies were glossed over in the official textbook paragraph. Caldwell paused, looked at the class, and said, "That's a good question. Let's compare sources." He pulled up a scanned newspaper editorial from the time period that criticized those policies. The next day, he was written up for introducing non-vetted political material. It wasn't partisan. It was historical. Didn't matter. Mr. Caldwell, quiet legend who treats history like a crime scene investigation instead of a coloring book with district-approved bullet points, ditches the corporate slide deck slop, hands out real letters/diaries/transcripts, makes kids actually think about whose story got rehearsed and why. Students flock to him because he respects their brains. District, beige suit bureaucrats lose their minds over 2 days off script and some archive PDFs that aren't on the sacred pre-approved list. Force him into weekly script submission like he's a telemarketer, then write him up for showing a literal historical newspaper because non-vetted political material. It was old as fuck and just facts. But okay, this isn't about standards. It's about control. They want robots reciting sanitized timelines, not teachers turning kids into detectives who question power. Caldwell refused to lobotomize his class for alignment, so they crushed him for it. Verdict. Ante, the students, and any who backed him, calling this bullshit out are 100% right. He's not the problem. The district turning education into a scripted PowerPoint factory is. Good teachers like him get punished for actually teaching while the system protects mediocrity. Fuck that noise. He deserved better. The kids deserved him. Quick pause before this gets worse. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Trust me, it only escalates from here. Story 7. He didn't smile much. He didn't joke. He didn't care if you liked him. But here's the thing, he was fair. He'd assign brutal vocabulary drills and timed translations for homework. People complained constantly. Why is this so hard? Why so many corrections? But if you actually did the work yourself instead of copying from Google Translate, you'd pass. Maybe not with an A, but solid. He wasn't out to fail anyone. The rumor was that he had been a university lecturer overseas before moving here. Nobody knew why he left. He never said. What most students didn't know was that he organized an annual independent language immersion trip, not through the school. Families signed up privately. It was always a small group. They'd spend 10 days abroad staying with host families, speaking only Russian, visiting theaters, markets, museums. My older brother went 1 year. He said it was intense. Wake up early, constant conversation practice, nightly journal reflections. No partying, no sightseeing fluff, full cultural deep dive. Petrov treated it like an academic mission. The reason he lost his job had nothing to do with the trip. It started during a class debate exercise. He'd split us into 2 groups to argue opposing interpretations of a short story. Not politics, just literary themes. Authority versus individual will. Classic stuff. One student wasn't participating, kept rolling his eyes, muttering under his breath. Petrov called him out, told him to contribute or step outside. The student snapped back with something sarcastic. I don't remember the exact words, but it was disrespectful. Petrov walked over, placed both hands on the desk, leaned down close, and said in a low voice, "In this room, you will show discipline." He didn't yell. He didn't touch the student. But the tone was sharp, controlled, intense. The student's parents complained that he felt intimidated, that the teacher had created a hostile environment. Administration reviewed classroom footage. They said his demeanor was overly severe, that his management style bordered on confrontational. They pulled up previous parent emails about his strict grading policies and rigid expectations. It built into a pattern. Petrov was asked to attend a professionalism workshop. He went quietly, came back unchanged. A month later, another complaint surfaced, this time about him marking down a paper heavily for using automated translation software. He'd written, "This is not your voice," across the top. The parent argued that there was no rule explicitly banning translation tools. The district decided he wasn't a good cultural fit. Officially, he resigned to pursue other opportunities. Unofficially, he was pushed out. The next year, Russian was replaced with a general world languages survey course taught from a workbook. Participation trophies for pronunciation attempts. No reading, no precision. I ran into Petrov once at a bookstore years later. He was browsing foreign language dictionaries. I asked if he was still teaching. He shook his head, said he was doing private tutoring now. Smaller groups, more control. Story 8. She ran the most disciplined, award-winning choir in the state. Then one defiant student, one blocked doorway, and one crashing piano rewrote her entire career in seconds. She didn't tolerate nonsense. Rehearsals ran like clockwork. If someone whispered, rehearsal stopped. If someone missed an entrance, she'd make that section repeat the measure until it locked in. But here's the part people forget. Her choir consistently won state competitions every year. The incident happened during after-school rehearsal. There was a senior, big personality, star athlete, not really invested in choir but needed the arts credit. He liked to test limits. Eye rolls. Loud sighs. Off-key singing on purpose. That afternoon he kept interrupting rehearsal, talking over her instructions. She warned him twice. On the third interruption, she asked him to leave. He refused. He laughed and said something along the lines of, "You can't make me." Witnesses say he knocked over a music stand on his way toward the door. Whether intentionally or not is still debated. Mrs. Delaney moved to block him from disrupting the rest of the class further. There was shouting, a scuffle of movement. Then the piano tipped. It wasn't even dramatic at first, just a horrible scraping sound as one leg buckled off the riser edge. The instrument didn't fully fall, but it slammed sideways hard enough to crack the casing and send sheet music flying. No one was crushed. No one was hospitalized. But the senior stumbled backward into a row of chairs and ended up with a dislocated shoulder. Parents got involved immediately. The narrative split in two. Some students said he had been aggressive and she was trying to protect the rest of us from escalation. Others said she stepped into his space and things spiraled. Security footage didn't have audio, just blurry movement. The district suspended her pending investigation. Within weeks, it was announced she had chosen early retirement. The senior quietly transferred schools. The choir program never recovered. Story 9. It started with cupcakes decorated like the periodic table. It ended with fire alarms, allergy protocols, and a chemistry teacher escorted out under investigation. Mrs. Hargrove was our chemistry teacher. Mid-40s, constantly humming show tunes under her breath. Lab coat always perfectly pressed. She had a reputation for brilliant demonstrations, flames, smoke, even a small explosion here and there, but she also had a reputation for eccentricity. One Friday, she decided to bring cupcakes to class. Not just any cupcakes. She'd baked them herself and decorated them with tiny periodic table elements made of frosting. The idea was cute, maybe even educational. Carbon and oxygen meet here, she said while handing them out. Kids loved it. Apparently, she hadn't checked the ingredients against school policy. One student had a severe nut allergy. The cupcake incident triggered a full-on health scare. Nobody was hurt, but it drew attention. That alone wouldn't have gotten her fired. She was creative, dedicated, and honestly, her students learned more chemistry in one semester than most do in a year. It was the next few weeks that unraveled her. She started a mystery element challenge in class. Students were supposed to mix safe chemicals to see color changes, pH shifts, reactions, all under supervision. Very basic stuff. But she took it further. She encouraged students to suggest their own experiment variations. No formulas, no guidelines. If a student wanted to try combining two safe substances in a new way, she said yes. The lab eventually got messy. One reaction produced a small smoke cloud. Fire alarms went off. Classes were evacuated. Nothing serious. But the district said it was reckless behavior and disregard for established safety protocols. Then came the final straw. A parent caught wind that Mrs. Hargrove had been letting students keep personal lab journals with experiment notes and observations, sometimes even home experiments, and posting selected results on a class blog she maintained. The parent objected to children performing experiments at home without explicit district approval. Administration convened an emergency meeting. They reviewed her teaching style, the blog, the freeform experiments, the cupcake incident, everything. Officially, the report said, repeated failure to comply with safety regulations and district protocol, resulting in potential student endangerment and liability exposure. Unofficially, it was clear later, creativity had crossed the line into chaos. She was asked to resign. She refused. A few weeks later, she was terminated. Mrs. Hargrove, humming show tune queen in a pristine lab coat who turns chem class into a goddamn edible periodic table party, brings homemade cupcakes frosted with C606 love notes, accidentally almost kills a nut-allergic kid, oops, no EpiPen protocol check, then doubles down with Mystery Element Challenge, where she lets teenagers freestyle mix chemicals like they're bartenders at a science rave. Smoke cloud? Alarm? Evac? That's just enthusiasm, kids. Then she lets them take journals home, run garage experiments, and post the coolest ones on a class blog like it's Instagram for future Nobel laureates. Parent sees, my child did unauthorized vinegar plus baking soda at the kitchen table, and loses their shit. Admin swoops in, potential liability exposure AK, we're terrified of lawsuits and hate anything that isn't a color by numbers worksheet. They strip the lab bare, force feed script-approved vanilla labs, and boot the one teacher who actually made kids excited about atoms instead of memorizing them for the test. She says, fuck you to resignation, gets canned anyway, then opens her own Mad Scientist Kid Academy where creativity isn't a fireable offense. Thriving. Meanwhile, the school churns out bored zombies who think chemistry is just follow the manual or die. Verdict. NTA, not even a little. The students, and anyone who misses her chaos, calling this firing bullshit are dead right. She wasn't reckless, she was alive. The district didn't fire her for safety. They fired her for refusing to turn education into a risk-free, joy-free conveyor belt of pre-packaged boredom. Cupcakes and smoke clouds beat sanitized worksheets every time. Fuck rigid protocol that punishes the best teachers while protecting the beige ones. She deserved better. The kids deserved her. Quick pause before this gets worse. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Trust me, it only escalates from here. Story 10. He warned us to step back. He said safety first. Seconds later, the ceiling tiles were smoking and administrators were sprinting down the hallway. He insisted on showing us how fuel-air ratios worked using a small metal container, some alcohol, and a spark. The room was crowded with students leaning in. He warned everyone, safety first. Step back if you're nervous. Somehow, the flames shot up further than expected. The ceiling tiles smoked. The fire alarm went off instantly. Everyone evacuated. Nobody was burned, but half the floor smelled like charred paper for weeks. Administrators were not impressed. A parent complained about reckless endangerment after hearing about the incident. Another wrote that her child had panic attacks because of the smoke. The district reviewed footage and lab notes. Officially, the issue was gross negligence in the use of combustible materials and failure to adhere to approved classroom procedures. Unofficially, people whispered that Mr. Callahan just loved taking risks and didn't care about rules. He was suspended for a week, during which he didn't speak to anyone but his union rep. When he returned, he was told to strictly follow the district's approved lab manuals. No deviations, no demonstrations not explicitly authorized. He refused. A month later, another incident occurred. Not as dramatic, just a miscalculated reaction with baking soda and vinegar, but it was enough to convince the administration that he wasn't willing to comply with safety standards. He was terminated the following week. The AP physics class got a new teacher. No sparks, no excitement. Worksheets replaced experiments. Half the students dropped the class. Story 11. He wasn't arrested. There were no police lights. Just a quiet pre-algebra teacher, stacks of personal essays from freshmen, and an investigation that revealed something shocking and crazy. Mr. Langston taught pre-algebra in my freshman year. He was quiet, slightly awkward, but everyone thought he was harmless. Always had a pocket protector. Always smelled faintly of coffee and chalk dust. At first, the weirdness was subtle. He'd ask students to come in early to review extra problems in his classroom alone. No one thought much of it. Some students even liked the attention. Then he started giving extra credit assignments that required students to write about themselves. Not math-related at all. Just a short essay about your hobbies, he'd say. Most kids laughed it off and did it. A few were uncomfortable but didn't speak up. The tipping point came months later. A student accidentally left her essay behind in the classroom. Another student saw him reading it and making notes on a separate sheet. That seemed off. Rumors spread. Students felt weird around him. Parents started asking questions. A few brave students finally reported that he had been asking for personal essays for months. Essays that went far beyond hobbies, asking about family, routines, and personal secrets. Administration investigated. They found dozens of essays. Many students confirmed he had read them privately and made comments that made them uncomfortable. It wasn't criminal, technically, but it violated district policy on boundaries between teacher and student. He was called in. He claimed he was encouraging personal reflection to to improve problem-solving skills. The district wasn't buying it. 2 weeks later, he was terminated. His classroom was cleared out. His math club was disbanded. Extra credit assignments were shredded. Students breathed a collective sigh of relief. Story 12. He wasn't selling drugs. He didn't yell at students. But when a harmless band teacher brought parrots, flaming batons, and a fire-starting lesson into school, what happened next was shocking and crazy at first. Everything seemed harmless. He ran the school band, gave quirky homework about composing tiny melodies, and encouraged anyone who wanted to play unusual instruments, theremin, washboard, even toy pianos, to do it. Then the incident started. One morning, he brought his personal drum kit to school for demonstration purposes. He set it up in the band room and started an impromptu percussion lesson before first period. Nothing illegal, just loud. A few students were irritated but shrugged it off. The next week, he brought in a pet parrot. He claimed it illustrated the concept of repetition in music. It squawked continuously, startled a few freshmen, and managed to poop on the piano keys. Staff filed complaints about sanitation. Then came the big one. He accidentally set fire to a stack of sheet music during a controlled flame demonstration. The smoke alarms went off. Fire marshals arrived. No one was hurt, but the band room smelled of charred paper for weeks. After that, parents started calling, citing reckless behavior and neglect of supervision. Administration launched an investigation. During the review, it came out that Mr. Gibbons had also been taking students to his home after school for advanced composition workshops. Some parents were upset that he wasn't formally signing them out and that the activities included minor physical risk, juggling flaming batons, using small fireworks, etc. The final straw was when a student tripped over a music stand at his house, spraining an ankle. District lawyers stepped in. Within a week, Mr. Gibbons was terminated. Band camp and after-school workshops were canceled. The instruments, birds, and pyrotechnics were removed from the curriculum entirely. Mr. Gibbons, the wildly creative band teacher who turned music class into a full-on spectacle, started with fun quirks, tiny melody homework, toy pianos, theremin jams, then leveled up fast. Brought his personal drum kit for an early morning demo that rattled the whole wing. Next, a live parrot as a repetition example that squawked non-stop and left surprises on the piano. Then the real showstopper, a controlled flame lesson that accidentally set sheet music ablaze, triggered alarms, summoned fire marshals, and left the room smelling like burnt scores for weeks. Parents freaked out over reckless behavior. Investigation revealed he was hosting after-school advanced composition sessions at his house. No official sign-outs, where kids juggled flaming batons and used small fireworks for rhythmic effects. One student tripped over a music stand, sprained an ankle. Lawyers got involved. Liability panic ensued. Fired in a flash. Band camp canceled. Parrots, fire, flare, ban. The program went back to safe, predictable, zero-risk basics. He didn't set out to harm anyone. He just refused to let music be boring and boxed in. He made it bold, memorable, alive, and the system couldn't handle the tiniest hint of unpredictability. A verdict. And not at all. The students, and anyone who misses the energy he brought, calling this firing ridiculous, are completely right. He wasn't dangerous. He was inspiring. The district didn't remove him for real safety reasons. They removed him because creativity with even minor chaos is too hard to control and ensure. They chose sanitized silence over a spark of excitement. He deserved support, not termination. The kids deserved the unforgettable teacher while they had him. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite.